I'm going to start with quite a big announcement, actually. This is exclusive, I'm happy to say, for Satluj TV. And I'm going to introduce, I would say, a very good friend of Satluj TV. He's a gentleman who I've interviewed on several occasions over the last couple of years. And he's a very powerful, very influential, but also a very decent, good man. And it's always been an absolute honour and a pleasure for me to talk with him, both on and off camera, and of course meet him in the flesh on several occasions. And this gentleman, he is an American businessman and a former US congressman. He represented Arizona's 8th Congressional District for 14 years, in 2003 to 2017. He's also a member of the Republican Party, and during his tenure, Trent Franks, who I'm referring to, served as Vice Chairman of the US House Armed Services Subcommittee on Strategic Forces. He was a Chairman of the US House Judiciary Subcommittee on the Constitution, Civil Rights and Civil Liberties. So he's got a huge background and a very senior, influential position during his time as a congressman. He actually achieved an awful lot during his time in Congress. He's also no stranger to India, or the issues that, of course, are currently raging between the North America and India itself. He, as a man, is a passionate defender of human rights. He's a former chairman of the Religious Freedom Caucus when he was as part of the US government. He was also a senior member of the US government's India Caucus, which took him to India itself, allowing him to meet then Prime Minister Sri Atal Bihari Vajpayee. Now, Trent himself is a practicing Christian. He's a man of deep conviction, and his focus during his time was not just promoting religious freedom in India, but also ensuring the basic human rights of religious minorities in India and ensured that they were respected. Now, Trent has made a video, and I'm going to follow this video with more information about this. But just have a look at this video. This is Trent Franks, Congressman Trent Franks.
Well, good morning to everyone. It is such an honor for me to be here and to join this board of directors of the Khalistan Caucus Foundation. You know, when I was in Congress, it was my privilege to be chairman of the Religious Freedom Caucus, because it was then, and it still remains, my fervent conviction that religious freedom is the foundation of all other human freedoms, and that without religious freedom, all other freedoms will eventually fail. The core ideal of the United States of America is that all of us here and across the world are created equal, and we are endowed by our Creator with the unalienable rights of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And seeing this sacred ideal realized for every member of the human family has been the preeminent commitment of my entire public life. And we're gathered on this particular morning to shine the light of truth upon the history of the Sikh people, who have so often been denied these basic rights of religious freedom. Theirs is a story that is vital for the whole world to hear, and it's still one that remains largely untold. It's the story of a noble and fervent people who have found themselves unfairly caught up in the machinations of empire building on more than one occasion across the pages of history. So many promises made to the Sikh people across the years have been summarily broken, and they have been oppressed, persecuted, and desecrated for so long. But thanks to some of the individuals in this very gathering, the world is now becoming aware of the injustice the Sikh people have endured. I believe Sikhs, like all other religious groups, have the right to religious freedom. They have a right to peacefully advocate for their own homeland and to openly educate their own countrymen as to the rich and noble history and the culture of the Sikh people without fear of violence from any government. Ironically, what was first just a reasonable request for more autonomy and religious freedom in Punjab has now grown into an independence movement, largely because of the heavy-handedness of the Indian government. Now, I personally believe the Sikh people deserve their own autonomy and independence. But I'm also convinced that at the very least, a strong majority of the American people, as well as the people of the world, still hold religious freedom to be a sacrosanct human right. And I believe the more the true story of the Sikh people is told, the more the world will come to believe, as I do, that they have earned and deserve autonomy and independence. In the meantime, I would call upon the Indian government to unequivocally recognize the religious freedom of all of their people, including the Sikhs. India claims to be a nation of religious freedom, and we all I genuinely want that to be true. Unfortunately, I have personally witnessed the vestiges of the Hindu caste system still lingering in some of India's practices towards some of their own people. And I think this brings a special scrutiny to the examples of the transnational killing of innocent Sikh individuals based on their political and religious beliefs. We have a special responsibility to examine these and other vital issues very carefully, especially when there's a history of past human rights violations, as has been the case under the current and many previous Indian governments. I believe it is vital for the governments of India, America, and human governments all over the world to understand that their core strength as individual nations is grounded in recognizing this fundamental human right of all people to be free and to worship as they choose. God help us all to embrace that immutable truth.
So very, very powerful words from Congressman Trent Franks, and I think the significance of this statement cannot be understated. Is that Congressman Franks is an extremely powerful figure. He's got an enormous amount of experience. He's also got an enormous amount of influence at US governmental level. He also knew Joe Biden, worked alongside Joe Biden. So, he's moved in the right circles. So what Congressman Franks has announced here is that he is joining the board of directors of the Khalistan Caucus Foundation. Now, this is enormous. So the Khalistan Caucus Foundation has 21 board members, most of which we can't reveal who those board members are in detail for obvious reasons. But the fact, and of course it's not surprising that most of those board members, and even I don't know the full list, but I'm assuming it's likely that most of them will be from the Sikh community. But now to have a congressman, a US congressman with such an enormous influence and such an enormous presence on that board of directors lends a huge amount of not just credibility, but an enormous amount of weight to the foundation. So what actually is the Khalistan Caucus Foundation? Well, in summary, I'll just give you a quick sort of overview of what it officially represents. Again, I can't give too much details away at this stage. But it exists to assert that Khalistan is not only a viable aspiration, but an essential foundation for regional stability, justice and self-determination in South Asia. So this is its mission statement. Khalistan stands as a response to India's shift towards authoritarianism, marked by its exclusionary policies and marginalisation of minorities, and offers a democratic alternative grounded in Sikh values of Miri Piri, that's the balance of spiritual and temporal governance, and Sarbat Dabala, that's the welfare of all. An independent Khalistan committed to justice, inclusivity and community welfare would embody, of course, unsurprisingly, these principles, establishing a governance model that uplifts the region, champions minority rights and counters the authoritarian impulses pervading much of South Asia. As India aligns more closely with the BRICS countries and embraces policies that increasingly diverge from democratic values, Khalistan offers the United States and, of course, its allies a reliable, ethically grounded partner to support a balanced Indo-Pacific. So in that mission statement, it's setting out just how important Khalistan will be, not just for spreading and establishing basic human rights and a moral code of humanity embodied into a single nation, But it also sets out the strategic advantages and the strategic benefits for the West. Of course, the whole of the West, the whole of the democratic world will benefit from the establishment of Khalistan. This is why Congressman Franks has lent his weight and has joined at a very public level now as a board member of the caucus. He has joined this because he understands just how important the establishment of Khalistan will be for not just the Sikh community, but of course the world as a whole, the democratic world particularly. And he did refer to, in that video, he talked about how the movement has evolved from just a basic demand for human rights and just a little bit of autonomy to run their own affairs locally in the Punjab. But because of India's authoritarian rule, because of India's basic, simple bullying, persecution and oppression against the Sikh community, because, of course, as we often talk about, they perceive the Sikh community as they realise it stands up to injustice. They realise they stand as an existential threat to their very existence and their control, the Brahmanical control of India. And this is what Khalistan will represent. It will represent an autonomous, self-governing, sovereign nation, a homeland for the Sikh nation. And it will stand as a beacon for human rights. Now, the caucus, the Khalistan Caucus Foundation, what is it itself and what is the purpose? Of course, we've talked about its mission statement, but its practical purpose runs more significant and more practical, more pragmatic than that. The purpose will be to take the Khalistan discussion to a more diplomatic level in the United States. It's a lobby organisation to aim for that end goal, which of course is a free Khalistan. The foundation will be open to take advice from all Sikhs living in various countries, and as a minimum, a 5-member committee known as the Khalsa Panchayat from each country directly connected with the Khalistan Caucus Foundation Secretariat at Washington, D.C. So, as we've often talked about, the Sikh Federation exists to coalesce, to unite and to filter down into one single voice, the voice of the Sikh community. The Khalistan Caucus Foundation will coexist with a similar role, a similar raison d'etre, to form a powerful voice, a united front, a united voice for the whole Khalistan movement, particularly, and it is of course US basis. It is designed to exist in the United States at a diplomatic level. It has the connections, and likewise, of course, through Congressman Franks, it now has the power and the connections to be able to speak into the ears that need to hear this message in the United States government. And of course, as the Trump administration takes power next month, it now has this powerful organisation, this foundation with many key members, many powerful members within the community, and of course now bolstered by Congressman Franks. This powerful committee, this powerful organisation now can speak into those ears of the US government because they sit amongst it now. They know the right people, they have the right connections, and they can send this very powerful message into the very heart of the United States government. They can talk at the same level, and they can explain in very clear and unambiguous terms why Khalistan is so important, why it's important just for basic human rights and the establishment of a better regime in that region, in the Indian subcontinent, but also, more importantly, for the West and for the democratic world, why Khalistan will stand as that most important beacon, that most important central part of democracy within the Indian subcontinent. Trent often talks about how, sadly, the Indian government are moving away from a democratic principle of governance more towards a totalitarian system of governance. That is why they are aligning more with the BRICS economies, the likes of Russia and China. It is very important then that people in the region are given an alternative, a democratic alternative. If they don't wish to fall into totalitarianism, as India is going, then they are offered an alternative in that region. Khalistan. Khalistan will stand in that region as a relatively small geographic location, but in terms of its heart, it will be an enormous beating heart of democracy in that area. It will be a country with its borders open to all who want to live under that democratic, benign regime, that regime that will follow the rule of law, that will follow the principles of Sikh, which means that it sees all their fellow human beings as equal. Men, women, whatever their background, whatever their religion, whatever their creed, whatever their beliefs, all people, all human beings are seen and treated as equal under Sikh, and that is how Khalistan will be governed. So, James, this is a very, very significant move. It's a fantastic move for the Khalistan movement. It proves also that the Khalistan movement isn't just supported by, of course, those within the Sikh community itself. It is supported by many others. Even James, you and I stand testament to the fact that this message that the Khalistan whole sovereign movement stands for extends beyond the Sikh community. It extends to all of us who live in the democratic world, because we all believe in democratic principles. We all believe in human rights. We all believe that everybody on this planet has the right to live under a democratic governance, should they so choose. Everybody has the right to free speech. Everybody has the right to choose those who lead them and under what governance that they live and under what rules they live. Those are the principles of democracy. That is what Khalistan stands for. So I think this is an enormous announcement. It is exclusive to Satluj. We're delighted to bring it to you. Well done to Congressman Franks, and it is an absolute, as I say, an absolute pleasure and an honour to know Trent Franks, and likewise to have him present on our show. James.
Absolutely. Excuse me. And yeah, we had a bit of a technical issue, but I'm back. And I would just like to say, yeah, as more and more people in today's world are understanding what Khalistan represents and what it can bring to the table on the international stage, I think that we can see a very positive future for Khalistan, for the referendum, and for the support of the Sikh people. Now, let's go into 2025 with the positive outlook that things are going to only get better from here, Angus.